and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2023-24 season. My name is Dan, and it's Friday, which means we need to make some final decisions. So today we're going to go through all of the press conference and injury information, look at the expected minutes for various players, as well as looking at some of your favourite double game week picks for this week. We're going to do an updated free hit draft and captains as well. Loads to come today. Make sure you leave a like if you do enjoy this video. Do subscribe if you're new around here. Let's get started. So starting off with some press conferences, guys, and we'll start off with Arsenal. We'll go through team by team alphabetically, and first of all, apparently it's too soon for Timber. Timber is going to be playing with the under-23s until he is ready to start for Arsenal, but he's progressing very well in training apparently, and everyone else is good. So actually a very positive Mikel Arteta today, which was quite nice to see. So clean bill of health pretty much, other than that Timber situation that's been going on for a long time. For Aston Villa, no press conference, but Douglas Luiz is going to serve his final game of suspension against Bournemouth this game week, and Moreno has also been ruled out for a couple of weeks as well. For Bournemouth, Semenyo, he is available and expected to be in this squad. So positive news there for anyone who has held on to Semenyo for the double game week. He is going to be available. Sinistera, however, he's going to be out for the rest of the season. Tavernier, his injury is less serious, but he's still going to be out for this game week. For Brentford, there's no clear update on Tony's hip injury. Yeah, really difficult one. Thomas Frank really not giving it too much away, saying that Tony wants to play, and you know that he's desperate to get back up to fitness, but he did conclude with, let's see if he's available or not. We're not sure. Aja and Norgard, they are available though. So yeah, good news on Aja, Aya and Norgard. They are back. For Brighton, again, no press conference, but Stupinian has picked up an ankle injury. He picked that up last game week, so we're not sure if he's actually going to be available or not to face Man City. Gilmore, Milner and Webster are the closest players to returning as of last week's information. So we might be able to see some of these players return very soon, but I'm not really sure, to be honest. Of course, Brighton not playing until next Thursday, so it's difficult on today, Friday, almost a week away, this fixture. It's difficult to get exact news on what's going to happen there. For Burnley, Aldakil and Bayer apparently not going to play again this season. Koleosho may play before the end of the season, but he's not going to be available this week. O'Shea is going to return to Burnley following a suspension though. For Chelsea, Sterling, Enzo and Disasi are available once more, and Kunku back in partial training, but still not going to be available. Sanchez also back in partial training following illness, but think again he's probably not going to be quite ready for this game week. And for Crystal Palace, Jefferson Lerma, he picked up a hamstring injury. He is going to be out for this game week, which is a bit of a blow for the Crystal Palace defense, and Hughes and Ward are going to be assessed as well, but might come a little too soon for them. Holding and Richards, they are back in training. I know some people still have Richards in their squad. You've got a chance that he might be available for the double game week. For Everton, I wish I could give you a clearer answer on this one. All I can tell you is that Branthwaite was back in light training today. So, is he going to be back in the Everton lineup? Well, they do need him, because I think Everton defensively are a lot poorer when Branthwaite is not playing. So, he is in light training. It's going to be a little bit touch and go with him. Same with Calvert-Lewin, light training. Not sure I would really trust a player like Calvert-Lewin with his injury situation at the moment over the course of a double game week. Coleman, he is touch and go at best though, so I probably wouldn't expect Coleman to be playing this game week. Fulham, once again, a clean bill of health as always, as we see every single game week. Perhaps Newcastle could maybe take some tips from their medical team, because they seem to be absolutely doing amazingly keeping everyone fit. Liverpool, Bradley is out for the rest of the month. We kind of knew about this one already, and Trent and Jota continued to get some game time, building up their fitness, I suppose, in the Europa League. And we will talk a little bit more about Trent and Jota and how many minutes we expect them to play in just a few minutes time. But first of all, let's finish off the press conferences with Luton. Mengi should be back. Kabore will be back. Sambi Lokonga, he's still unavailable. He was potentially going to be back this game week. That's not going to happen now. Unfortunately, no other returnees for Luton, so still quite a light squad ahead of this game week. For Man City, apparently Haaland felt a muscular injury and he's going to be assessed. So, of course, we know that Haaland, he requested to be substituted off against Real Madrid in that quarter-final in the Champions League. Apparently, it's not just a case of fatigue. He actually did feel a potential issue. You know, maybe a reoccurrence of something that's happened before, maybe his ankle, for example, but it's suggesting it's muscular, so not sure. He's going to be assessed ahead of the Chelsea game at the weekend in the FA Cup. And then, of course, on Thursday, we'll have the, well, the main event, I suppose. We'll have the that that Brighton game, which I know a lot of people want Haaland for. So yeah, it's difficult to say again with Man City's Premier League game being quite far away. Difficult to judge exactly whether he's going to be starting or not. Now, De Bruyne's issue, however, was just fatigue related. So yeah, he's going to be fine. De Bruyne is no problem there. Akanji, he was also another player who requested a substitution in the Champions League, but there was no comment on him. So tight lips around Akanji's availability. For Manchester United, Anthony, Maguire and McTominay are available. Shaw, Varane, Lindelof, Evans and Martinez still all out. Manchester United defence in absolute pieces right now, which might bode well for Sheffield United attackers if you fancy them on the double game week. And Garnacho apparently has apologised to Ten Hag following a little bit of a spat we saw in the week that Garnacho maybe not happy about being withdrawn from the Man United team last game week, and went onto Twitter and started liking some tweets that were critical of the manager. But apparently he's apologised. Ten Hag has kind of acknowledged that Garnacho is a young player. He's still got a lot to learn, and yeah, hopefully they are going to be able to move past that. And Garnacho, I'm not necessarily sure he comes straight back into the Manchester United team, particularly with Anthony back available, but certainly he is, he's not ruled out anymore. So, which is good. Newcastle, no press conference again. Trippier, he was progressing well last Friday, so it suggests to me that Trippier is probably one of the closer players to returning for Newcastle. Wilson, however, is back in full training. Now, I don't want to say that means he is going to get minutes. However, maybe a small concern that Isak might not play the full 90 this game week. We might see Isak withdrawn slightly earlier, with Wilson potentially getting some game time. Of course, that will happen more and more towards the end of the season, but Isak's still a fabulous pick, of course. Just something to be aware of. Wilson is back in training and he will take some minutes, but the form that Isak has been in at the moment, I think it's very, very difficult to drop him for the returning man. For Nottingham Forest, Elanga back in full training again. He is going to be assessed. Awani is back doing parts of training, so not as confident there, and Bolly is still out. For Sheffield United, Bogle and Robinson are struggling for fitness apparently. Bulldog Lau, Norrington Davies, and many other players are still out. Brewster and Jebinson are unlikely to actually be risked for the remainder of the season, so don't expect any minutes there. Not that too many people have them in their FPL teams. For Spurs, no fixture this game week. Blank game week for Spurs, of course. For West Ham, again, no direct answer from Moyes. Areola is back in training and is hopefully going to be available. He wasn't even in the squad in the Europa League, but apparently there is hope that he could be available this game week against Palace. Bowen, he needed injections actually to play midweek, like pain-killing injections, because yeah, he had to play through a lot of pain in that really important game against Leverkusen, and I think he's still slightly doubtful for this game week. So it's going to be a little touch and go. If he is in a lot of pain still, then maybe it might be better to leave him out the team, but I guess we'll see. And Agard is going to be assessed as well. And finally, for Wolves, unfortunately, it is bad news all around, really. Ainori and Hechan are technically available, so I've put ticks next to their name, but it's actually not that positive. So Ainori, he is likely, apparently, to be on the bench for the game against Arsenal, which may mean he is going to be available for that second game against Bournemouth, but certainly for the first game, yeah, he's going to be on the bench. That's kind of the best case scenario there. So not really a player I would want to bring into my team anymore. If I was on a free hit, I would not be choosing Ainori. And if you have him, there may be some reason to consider benching him as well, potentially. The one positive thing, I guess, with Ainori is because there is other injuries at the moment in the forward position that continue to go on. We thought, you know, Wolves were getting back to having a few forward players available, but actually now it's not looking like that as much. So maybe in the second game against Bournemouth, Ainori may take up a more advanced position again, playing on the wing potentially there. Hechan is apparently only fit to play 45 minutes. So again, if you're on a free hit, not a player I would be looking to touch, really. Yeah, not looking super good there, but you know, second game maybe he's able to play a little bit more than 45 minutes. And Cunha, well, this was a surprise today. I didn't see this coming, but yet apparently in the last game week 33, Cunha, he had a impact injury and it's turned out to cause some muscular damage, and he has been ruled out, essentially. He is out for this game week. Certainly he's out for the first game. First game against Arsenal, he is going to be out. Second game, yeah, I'm not sure, but it doesn't sound too positive, to be honest. So Cunha, if you're on a free hit, Cunha, no longer an option. If you are looking to make transfers, looking to bring in a new forward for this game week, Cunha, again, not really going to be an option for you this week, unfortunately. But we will have a look at some other forwards you can bring in this game week instead. But overall, certainly for this first game, at least, it looks like Wolves are going to, well, not be at full strength. They play against Arsenal first, and that could be a real opportunity for your Arsenal players. I think the odds of the clean sheets for Arsenal have probably gone up quite a lot. And obviously, with, no Dawson as well in the team, it's going to be a good opportunity for some Arsenal players against this Wolves team that are clearly struggling to, field a full team of first choice players, I suppose. So those are your press conferences. Apologies for the bad news on Wolves. I really had hoped for better news for a lot of those players as well, but fortunately not to be this game week. But we need to make some decisions based on what we have now in terms of information. So first of all, let's talk about Liverpool, because I know a lot of you guys want to go for that triple Liverpool for Game Week 34 for the double game week, whether you're on a wild card, whether you're on a free hit, whatever you're doing. I'm sure you are thinking about Liverpool players for this week with their double game week. Now, I wanted to have a look at how many minutes some of these players have played recently and see if we can try and predict who is going to be available, how much they are going to play. And I think it is going to be kind of difficult to get this right. I am expecting rotation from Liverpool, and I'm just going to get some of my notes up as well here to go through. So obviously, I look at the last two games against Crystal Palace and Atalanta and looked at the minutes each player played, or at least some of the more rotation risk players might have played. So Salah played 90 and then 66. Diaz played 66 and 66. You would say that those two are probably the most nailed on attackers, and that's kind of been proven by the fact that they did play both games. I do think Diaz, given that he only played 66 minutes in each of the last two games, that is probably a positive sign that he's going to be able to get some decent minutes against Fulham and Everton in the double game week. Darwin Nunez, he started against Palace, but actually he was on the bench against Atalanta, and there's two ways of looking at this one. Was he benched or was he drops or rotated? It's very difficult. It's difficult to say. I would judge, looking at that Liverpool team that did face Atalanta, it looked full strength, other than Gakpo was playing instead of Darwin in the forward position. So for that reason, could it be that Darwin was actually dropped for that game, and maybe actually Jurgen Klopp maybe looking at some different ways of lining up their attack without Darwin in that starting lineup, because Darwin has not been in great form recently. Now that said, because he hasn't played as many minutes as some of these other forwards, and he is kind of more fit than some of these other forwards as well, I would suggest that he still probably gets at least one start of the two games. But if it is that he is being not phased out of the team necessarily, but maybe just being dropped temporarily from the first choice 11, we might not see as many minutes from him. I still think we're probably looking at 110, 120 minutes for Darwin over the double game week, and I think that is going to be enough, and that's probably going to be the case with most of these attackers. Jota, interesting one here. Apparently his injury situation, obviously he was ahead of schedule compared to a Trent Alexander-Arnold, for example. It was a little bit further ahead in his recovery, but supposedly, he picked up a new knock before the Atalanta game. He was meant to start in that game, but actually he ended up having to go to the bench because he wasn't quite ready. So that, again, worries me a little bit with what is essentially going to be 3 games in 6 days. Jota was not quite ready for the first game. Is he going to be ready for the second game? And how much load is going to be put on him if he has kind of maybe, had a reoccurrence of the injury problem? Is he going to be rested a little bit more? I would have some concerns. Obviously, Jota, a really good pick. We're going to have a look at Jota and some other midfield choices in a minute, but yeah, just be a little bit wary about that one and his potential game time. And Gakpo, I'll just throw it on here just to give an idea of how many minutes he's played recently. Not really expecting too much in terms of minutes from him when we actually get to the double game week. And I think there's some better options anyway, to be fair. For defenders, Trent, 42 minutes in the Premier League game against Palace. That was more than he was expected to play. Bradley's injury basically led to Trent being forced to play, essentially. He wasn't quite ready to start that game. He wasn't expected to play that many minutes, but he was forced to, unfortunately. He then went ahead and played 72 minutes against Atalanta, which again, quite a lot of minutes there for him, for a player just returning from injury and is apparently, not quite, he wasn't quite ready. Like, literally just last week, I think last Thursday, not Thursday just gone, the one before, Trent was kind of, he wasn't ready to start at all. He was just in the Atalanta squad just to make up the numbers. By Sunday, he was played prematurely, and against Atalanta, maybe played more minutes than was hoped as well. So, whilst it's definitely positive that he's getting back into the rhythm of playing, and I think he'll be a big part for the rest of the season for Liverpool, I do worry if there may be slightly less minutes, maybe Gomez coming in the right back position at times, because Gomez, I think, has played pretty well when he has come in for Liverpool, and I think that's just a little concern there. But obviously very high upside with Trent, very high attacking upside, so he could play both games, but I don't think it's guaranteed given how many games he's played recently, how he's playing more minutes than he would have normally been expected to, but given that the Bradley injury situation, he's kind of been forced to play more than he should. Can Gomez come in and give him a little break against one of Fulham or Everton? You would suggest that maybe. Now, Robertson, he is well in the clear by this point. He's been back for a while. He's been playing a lot of minutes. He is a player who can play a lot of minutes as well, and he's been playing pretty well. So I feel more confident about Robertson's minutes than a Trent, but it's still something that you can be wary of. I think Gomez, again, could come in at left back. Tsimikas, he could play, but he's not been in great form himself. So it's difficult to say with Robertson, but I think Robertson probably expected more minutes than Trent. It's a case of what you want. Do you want a very safe player like Van Dijk? Do you want to go somewhere in the middle like Robertson? Or do you want a high-risk, high-reward player like Trent Alexander-Arnold? That's going to be up to you. But yeah, just be wary of this Liverpool minute situation. There's probably going to be a decent amount of rotation, and it's very, very difficult to kind of suggest who's going to play when, how many minutes they're going to play, who's going to be benched. Yeah, we've got definite chaos coming this game week for Liverpool. Arsenal's situation is slightly different because we haven't really got players returning from injury necessarily, so that's not as much of a concern about managing minutes because of, reoccurrence of injuries, but we have got some players who have just played a load of football recently. Saka and Havertz in particular playing a lot of minutes recently, particularly Havertz, who's been playing pretty much every single game, starting every single game for Arsenal, and you can take that as a positive sign or you can take that as a negative sign that maybe he is due a rest. It really depends on where your agenda is and what makes you feel better, I suppose. I think this game week, going into the deadline with Arsenal and Liverpool players, it is going to be all about agendas. You can look at many things many ways. Trent is getting back up to speed. That means he's ready to start more and more games. Or, Trent has played too many games recently. He's just come back from injury, so he will be benched. You can look at it in different ways, and it's very difficult to say which way is right and which way is wrong, to be honest. But yeah, Havertz certainly a player been playing loads of minutes. Will that continue? I don't know. I think so. To be honest, I think so. I think Havertz is reasonably safe, but not super safe. Ødegaard played a lot of minutes as well. He actually came into the Bayern game with a bit of a knock. So whether he just played through that knock and maybe might get a rest in the double game week, I don't know. But I would suggest he's probably reasonably nailed on. Jesus, not quite convincing yet. Martinelli, similar situation there. Trossard's played well when he has played. May eat into some of the minutes of some of the other attackers as well. But, there's 3 forward slots available. If Saka and Havertz are taking one of them, it could be that Jesus, Martinelli and Trossard share minutes for the remaining positions, I suppose there. Should be said that Saka, he looks injured pretty much every game, but he's just playing through it. I wonder if Saka could get a rest. So difficult, man. It really, really is. And for defenders, White, 67 minutes in against Aston Villa, and in the midweek against Bayern, 90 minutes. It's okay. Zinchenko didn't play against Bayern, but he did play against Aston Villa. Again, difficult to say with the left back situation who's going to be going in there. Is it going to be Zinchenko, Kivior? Tomiyasu can go in there as well. Tomiyasu could go right back. Yeah, super tough. So I don't have answers. I can't tell you directly what's going to happen. I wish I could. If I could, I would have to be some kind of genius, and I would be winning FPL every year if I could predict these things, but it's just too difficult, and it's going to be about your own agendas, how you interpret this information that I've put in front of you, and it's going to kind of be up to you guys in a way. But I would say that Salah, Luis Diaz, Saka, Havertz, Ødegaard, these kind of players are probably the safest picks. A little bit of risk around the likes of Trent and Robertson, a little bit of risk around some of the other players at Liverpool in particular. There's going to be shared minutes in the forward slots. Darwin is not nailed on anymore, so yeah, do with that what you will. Okay, this is going to be a long episode already, I can tell. So I'm going to try and go through this reasonably quickly, but here are the midfielders that a lot of people are looking to bring into their team this week. I know we've got the likes of Saka and Salah. Most of you guys already own those players. A lot of you looking for a new midfielder. If you're looking for Gordon as your new midfielder, I can't help you. I'm looking at double game week players only this week. I think that is a sensible thing to do. We've got a double game week. Let's play it. So, Eze, he is on penalties. He's low rotation risk, and actually, he pretty much has the best underlying numbers of all of these players as well. So I think at 6.1 million, he is by far the most obvious midfielder to bring into your team this game week. Outside of that, you've got the likes of Havertz and Luis Diaz. Slightly worse numbers than Eze, but two players that have been in reasonably good form themselves as well. So if you fancy going for one of them, definitely look like good picks. Luis Diaz with the slightly better numbers than Havertz, actually. But you could argue that Havertz, you may feel a little bit more confident with the fixtures and the form of Arsenal than maybe you do with Liverpool at the moment, who have been struggling for goals. So, make of that what you will once again. And Diogo Jota, higher rotation risk, of course. And actually, his underlying numbers are pretty much the worst of these four players as well. So I'm not even really sure if it's worth the risk. But what we do know about Jota is he's very clinical. And if he can come back in, get back to the great form he was showing prior to his injury, his low numbers are not going to matter so much because he will finish off the chances. But you need minutes in order to do that. And I would say that out of these four players, if I could pick just one, it would be Eze. After that, probably Luis Diaz, third choice Havertz, and then finally Jota is probably my least favourite of these midfielders that a lot of people are looking to bring in this week. You can also throw in Ben Brereton Diaz here as well, but yeah, I think he will be a tier slightly lower than some of these guys. For forwards, with Cunha out, we are looking at a slimmer and slimmer picks, to be fair, for the double game week. Solanke looks reasonably good on penalties, very, very low rotation risk there, which is good. His numbers are decent, very, very strong, and the fixtures aren't too bad either. Aston Villa are better when they play at home, in fairness, but Wolves are a team that do concede chances. So I think there's opportunity there for Solanke. Mateta really standing out now as the new best cheap pick. Now Cunha is out. His numbers aren't amazing, but he's been in some good form recently, and he's looking better and better. And I think that will improve. Another nailed-on player there as well. Now, Darwin's numbers are just the best. They really, really are. But what we have now is a player who is at rotation risk, who hasn't been in good form, and who isn't finishing the chances that he is getting. So, despite the great numbers, I think Darwin is still a very, very risky player. And if we're limited to 3 Liverpool picks, I would argue that Darwin is no longer in the top 3 Liverpool players to own. If you have him already, you probably keep him, to be fair, but there is a lot of risk around Darwin with his minutes and with his form as well. And finally, I've put Ollie McBurney here as a bit of a differential. He's probably on penalties, he's low rotation risk, his numbers aren't too bad, but the fixtures against Burnley and Man United are actually quite tasty, quite nice for an attacker, so don't mind that. Outside of that, we could talk about Isak, we could talk about Watkins, we could talk about some single game week players, but we're not going to because, again, I would try and focus on the double game week players this week personally. Here is a quick free hit draft for you. Here's an updated draft, and this team is super, super template. Really, really boring. It costs 98 million, and it consists of Pickford in goal, a defense of Gabriel, Alexander-Arnold, and Munoz in defense. In midfield, we've got Salah, Eze, Saka, Havertz, and Luis Diaz, and up front, we've got Solanke and Mateta. On the bench, Neto, McBurney, Mikalenko, and Kirkes. And with the injuries that Bournemouth have at the moment, I think Kirkes, interesting differential, actually. He could actually play in a kind of a wing position, could be playing as a forward, really, with so many injuries to other wingers for Bournemouth at the moment. So that's a little mini shout for you guys. But yeah, this team is super boring. I know you guys are probably not going to like Pickford, but where else do you go? I like Raya, I like Alisson, but I would rather pick outfield players from Arsenal and Liverpool. I like Henderson, but then it's Henderson versus Munoz. I prefer Munoz. And outside of that, which defenses do you go for? Pickford against Everton. I mean, for Everton, probably at least gets you some save points. Neto is okay. If we're saying Wolves are going to be lacking players, then maybe Neto's okay. Sa, not convinced because Wolves are missing players. Where do you go for a goalkeeper if you want to make sure you have got your triple Liverpool, Arsenal, and Crystal Palace in your outfield positions? Because those are the guys who have the best fixtures, well, who have the best chance of points, I suppose. It's Arsenal, Liverpool, and Crystal Palace. So you want to focus on the outfield for those. Add Solanke in there for good measure. And goalkeeper, you know, you really could go anywhere for a goalkeeper, to be honest, outside of the big three of Alisson, Raya, and Henderson, like I say. So 123 predicted points for this team. It looks really good, but it's a bit boring. So if you wanted to make some tweaks to it, I would completely understand. For captains, we have one sensible option, and that's Mo Salah. I'm not particularly convinced by Mo Salah personally. His form has not been good at all. I worry about him a little bit. And I don't think these fixtures are amazing. Like Fulham away, Everton away, they're okay. They're okay. Everton is in particular a little bit better than Fulham. But given the form that Salah has been in, he's been pretty reliant on penalties to get the very rare points that he has been picking up recently. So, yeah, not totally convinced by this one. I think there's definitely an opportunity to go elsewhere. That being said, most FPL managers will be captaining Salah this game week. So if you go against Salah, you are going to go against the crowd big time this week. Now, when I was polling some of the experts and some of you guys as well, actually, Eze seems to be the second most popular captain there. Against West Ham and Newcastle, we saw earlier, he has really good numbers. He has really great fixtures against West Ham and Newcastle. We like the look of this. Do you dare go there for a captain? That's up to you. Saka is kind of the natural backup to Salah, I think, but there's not been a particularly anything convincing going on with Saka either. His numbers are down recently. He's not looking as hot as he was doing previously in the season. And that leaves us with Solanke as our final alternative to Salah, who I do like. The fixtures, I think, are actually pretty decent. We've got another penalty take here. All of these captain options are penalty takers, by the way, which is nice. And, yeah, obviously going to be playing in a forward position and hopefully getting some opportunities. So, yeah, all of these 4 players I don't mind for captain. I don't think there is a huge standout this week, though most people will naturally just go to Salah because of the lack of confidence in an Eze, Saka or Solanke. They will just naturally default to Salah as a captaincy. So these are the players I would be considering this week. These are the players I am considering these game week. I probably wouldn't go outside of these guys, to be honest. Maybe some of you like the look of Havertz or Luis Diaz. I don't know. Not totally convinced by those ones. But yeah, Salah if you can't make a decision. Eze, Saka, Solanke if you're feeling a little spicy. And finally, on the goalkeepers, play a double game week goalkeeper if you can. I think, again, I like Raya, Alisson, Henderson the most. After that, it's so difficult to split the likes of Pickford, Neto, Jose Sarr and Gribic. I would probably prefer Pickford and Neto at this moment, given the injury situation at Wolves and Sheffield United are, unfortunately, Sheffield United. Outside of that, there's a few single game week goalkeepers you could go for potentially, but yeah, definitely you would prefer at least to have a double game week goalkeeper if possible. And that's going to wrap things up for today and for this game week, guys. If you did enjoy this one, you found it useful, you got any new information, make sure you drop a like. Do leave a comment as well if you've got any other questions. I'll do my best to answer them for you guys ahead of the deadline. Subscribe if you want to see this kind of content every week. And I'll be back tomorrow with a deadline stream. We'll be going pretty early on the deadline stream and talk about everything ahead of a huge double game week. Guys, check out another video if you'd like to. But aside from that, I will see you later. Thanks.